Chapter 5: The Radionic Devices in Therapeutic Applications. Amazing healings at a distance? Although we have seen that man has practiced for thousands of years with a remote influence and connections between people, the radionics as a theory and as an object of serious research began in the 20th century by trained scientists. Radionics currently is used widely in the UK and India for therapeutic purposes. France has a long history of people who investigated the radionics for many different purposes using different types of devices. In Germany and other European countries, it is very successfully used for therapy in humans and animals through bioresonance devices that are an extension of radionics. The fundamental difference is that the energy measurements and the treatments are carried out through electrodes that are held with the hands. In its broad therapeutic side, we will make clear that all radionics systems are designed to establish a bridge between human consciousness and the energies of each patient. The aim is to make a measurement of health and disease from a purely vibrational perspective. If disturbances are detected, the patient is given the correct parameters using the radionics devices or through homeopathy, naturopathy, traditional medicine, or whatever the therapists consider appropriate. All these complementary therapies can also be tested on radionics equipment in relation with the patient. Through radionics, it is possible to quantify and measure the energy emitted by the physical organs and subtle energies present in the etheric body of a man. Chakras, channels, psychosomatic disorders, imbalances, and extensive additional information may be collected by radionic devices and corrected through them. Precisely this comprehensive information and the possibility to modify the imbalances using a vibrational treatment is what is not generally accepted by the scientific community. Some of the phenomena observed with radionics are so amazing and yet so irrational for the scientific analytical mind, and its critics claim that we are not facing a true science but a practice that borders on magic or the placebo effect. Curiously, it is the same approach that many treatments of homeopathy or alternative medicine, which nevertheless are commonly used successfully by people who do not find solutions in traditional medicine. For those who are unfamiliar with radionic devices, especially for those people who do not believe that humans have extrasensory abilities, it seems that all this is an accidental issue or pure statistical coincidence phenomena. However, those who are aware of the enormous possibilities of alternative therapies and the influence of human consciousness in healing open the door to experimenting and getting benefits of radionics and its many uses. In any case, the progress of quantum physics and laser holography allows scientific models to be developed that could explain radionics and its implications. Until then, we can consider the theoretical aspects and use the practical results that can be checked very easily when these devices are used. In radionics, devices with specially designed circuits are used. If used properly, it is possible to detect illness with much precision, but also it is possible to articulate a non-invasive therapy and purely vibrational in order to heal alignments of various kinds at vibratory level. Even treat serious diseases quite successfully. Radionics does not propose the abandonment of traditional medicine because of the radionic treatment, although it can be used as the only way at vibratory level, but usually a valuable aid and complementary to accelerate the healing process. Within the theoretical functioning of radionics and its appliances, we say that it sometimes appears to act as a sort of unconscious psychic amplifier to perceive energies by operators. Surprisingly, the practice showed that those who use these machines do not need any special training or detailed knowledge of diseases. Anyone can use very successfully the radionic devices from the start. It is very common in some radionic devices the use of software where organs or diseases are listed to facilitate the inexperienced operators detecting operation. But it's not always necessary, because the operator can accurately indicate changes in the subjects measured or diagnosed, often without knowledge of medicine or even when these programs are developed in languages unknown to the operator. When the name of the damaged organ appears, the person simply feels that his finger stops sliding over the adherence plate. This shows that most, if not all, human beings have the ability to detect information about other people by unconventional means. Most striking is the fact that vibrational healing energies are transmitted to a subject even thousands of kilometers away, with no connection more than the name and some data written on paper, although it works much better when there is a sample of the subject, such as hair, saliva, or a drop of blood. This reminds of the mental training courses of Jose Silva Mind Control, where in just one weekend anyone could develop a psychic ability to detect malfunctions and diseases from far away. But even in this case, you have to use this ability in special conditions, unlike with radionic devices. You can use the radionic machines when you want and in any environment. The challenge of radionics is to explain how using a special device, anyone can detect an illness from someone far away and also transmit vibrational remedies without physical contact. Even if the subject doesn't know is being treated, the beneficial effects can be determined with great speed and accuracy. Some history. The modern origin of radionics is curious and rugged. Interesting discoveries made by brilliant people from different backgrounds. People who did not fear criticism in their search for new horizons. Dr. Albert Abrams was the most renowned pioneer. This MD neurologist practiced in his profession in San Francisco in the early 20th century. Dr. Abrams used the technique of percussion to perform examinations on their patients as the other doctors of the time. Percussion is a system in which a doctor puts a finger on the abdomen and with the middle finger of the other hand strikes the first finger in order to create a specific sound. It is something like what many people do on melons and watermelons to establish its maturity. Using this system, a trained doctor may gather information about tissues and state of tissues or organs under the percussive area to explore organ size, abnormal excessive presence of water or gases, and general condition of the patient. On one occasion, Dr. Abrams was recognizing a patient using this methodology. The patient had cancer in a lip in an advanced stage. When the doctor made percussion on this patient's abdomen, he heard a sound that should not be there. To improve his posture, the patient changed place and the doctor noticed that the sound was very different. It was a hollow sound. He continued tests and found that every time the patient was oriented west, the sound was different from when he was oriented south. This rare phenomenon had never been noticed by Dr. Adams before. This led him to believe that the orientation of the patient's relative to the Earth's magnetic poles had some influence on the body and also had some kind of particular measurable energy emanation associated with lip cancer patient. The following experiment confirmed to the doctor that diseased tissues seemed to radiate some kind of vibration that could be measured. He explored a healthy subject and noted that percussion reflected the sound of a person in good health. However, when approaching a container of cancerous tissue, the healthy object showed the very sound of a person who had cancer. When a cancerous tissue sample was placed in another room, the person stopped producing an abnormal sound. Dr. Abrams concluded that the diseased tissue released a kind of energy, vibration, or radiation that was felt by the healthy subject, causing a reflection of the abdominal muscles where the percussion was made. Following these experiences, he began to investigate and realized that different diseased tissues produce different sounds when the samples were placed close to healthy individuals, and these people were examined by percussion. The orientation of the subjects was also important. Later, he connected healthy people with sick via cable and could see that the healthy people show the same sound patterns of sick patients. He did the same with samples of diseased tissue attached by wires to the front of the healthy subjects, and these also showed symptoms of the disease. The phenomenon only occurred when the volunteers were oriented to the west, something that puzzled our good doctor. Later, it was found that the location may be important or even decisive for measuring radionic emissions. The curious doctor went on differentiating sounds and associating them with different types of diseases. He began to realize that he had found a system that could be quite accurate and help with detecting diseases. However, one day he realized that the sound produced in a patient with syphilis was no different from that produced by a cancer patient, and the reflection produced was the same in the abdominal area. Therefore, the system followed began not to be so clear. It was evident that a new method was needed to measure with more reliable and different vibrations corresponding to the different pathologies. In any case, Dr. Abrams concluded that the energy emitted by the tissue was some kind of energy that could flow on a cable and even in the space, producing some reaction in tissues of healthy people placed in surrounding areas. From here, our investigator's mind began to race. He had something important in hand, but needed improvement. Abrams began experimenting with this electromagnetic energy. He ordered a special instrument or box to be built, with potentiometers and resistors, so that he could make modification on the energy through the apparatus. He would create a circuit formed by the healthy volunteer, the device, and the ill patient. Abrams intended to use the device as a discriminator in order to filter out frequencies that were received and thus be more accurate in diagnosing various diseases or what could be measured. When using potentiometers and the numbering they provided, he found that they could find different kinds of alignment through their code numbers. When getting the right number for a disease and reversing it, the healthy subjects show a positive abdominal reflex. Based on its initial success, Dr. Abrams created a guide which contained specific areas of the abdomen to establish a diagnosis and the resistance in ohms that were required to detect major diseases by his device. But here's the kicker. Our curious doctor realized he could place a drop of blood from the patient on paper and to connect it via cable to his radionic device, with potentiometers and resistors, and the healthy subject. Once done, it was not necessary to have the patient in the circuit. Only with a drop of blood he could make the diagnosis as precise as before. This discovery was of paramount importance and at the same time of great controversy. Ultimately, it led to the modern practice of using blood samples on filter paper to diagnose the illness of a patient by means of radionics technology. Later, it was also found that it was feasible to use other samples with good results. After that, Dr. Abrams got hundreds of patients diagnosed correctly, more comfortably, and with less involvement in the process. Nevertheless, doctors who worked with him began to complain of the difficulty of properly learning the process and significance of percussion sounds. Abrams' mind continued to work. He devised a different percussion system to get the same results easily. With a glass rod, apprentices could produce percussion more easily, but it happened that when students located an abnormal reflex and the rod touched the skin presented a certain resistance to the glass rod and started to wrinkle. By using this reaction, they could get the same signal with percussion, but much easier to learn. They still needed the collaboration of healthy people that would serve to establish the full circuit. These people were exhausted after several hours of measurement. Moreover, for the detection and measurement experiments, it was found that the yellow color produced errors because it reacts with the solar plexus, and that it was not possible to use the abdomen to detect alterations. This color provided additional energy that seems to interfere, causing muscle changes. Despite apparent difficulties, Dr. Abrams continued evaluating his process. If the reflexes of the disease were mitigated when the healthy volunteer changed their spatial orientation because of terrestrial magnetism, meant that the disease itself also improve or even dissolve if there was some kind of vibration, energy or force to counteract disturbances caused by alignments. So the doctor began conducting experiments with medicines on purely vibrational level. By using known cures for certain diseases, he introduced them into the circuit without giving the medicine physically to the patients. Just in a bottle placed inside the radionics circuit and connected to the volunteer. For example, our researcher found that by introducing quinine in his radionics circuit, there was an abdominal reflex in a healthy volunteer, identical to that recorded in a volunteer connected by a cable to a patient with malaria. The reflections observed for both diseases and cure were identical. This coincidence suggested that there might be some kind of energetic resonance between the disease, malaria in this case, and the remedy use, quinine, drug commonly used at the time. Let us point out here that in classical homeopathy, healing occurs only when the vibrational frequency of the remedy matches the frequency of the disease of the patient, neutralizing and balancing the body again. Abrams' hypothesis gained further strength from another observation made during his malaria research. When exploring a number of individuals by using a blood sample from a patient with this disease, along with a few grains of quinine placed in the radionic circuit, he noted that the abdominal reflex reaction of malaria had disappeared. While the volunteer remained connected to the patient's blood and the quinine, it was not possible to reproduce the corresponding abdominal reflection of malaria. Quinine seemed to void the negative energy radiation or cancel the pathological vibration caused by infected blood. Abrams tested a variant of the experiment by undergoing examination of another infectious disease, syphilis. The cure employed at the time was mercury. He introduced a blood sample from a patient with active syphilis in the radionic circuit and found that volunteers showed characteristic abdominal reflexes of syphilis. However, while it was in the circuit, he added mercury to a vessel containing a sample of blood from a syphilis patient. The abdominal reflex reaction of syphilis disappeared in the volunteer. This brought more evidence to the researcher to the fact that in addition to the chemical effects produced in the body, there was another important reason why some drugs cure certain diseases. He concluded that the substances used to heal have certain energetic properties characteristics, a blueprint or measurable identity, and the ability to have influence on illness. In this case, properties that served to neutralize the radiation produced by abnormal pathological diseases for which they had been prescribed. Dr. Abrams questioned rightly whether there would be a complete method of energetic treatment and healing adequate to his theory of electromagnetic vibrations of this disease. So he talked to leading experts in electrical circuit of his time, and finally he developed a device to which he gave the name of oscilloclast. The patient was connected to this device with a cable and an electrode. After making an initial diagnosis of the patient's disease through his classical equipment, Dr. Abrams rotates the oscilloclast dials until he finds the proper position on the device to obtain a reaction. The various dials and combinations were adjusted to a particular frequency. The various dials and combinations were adjusted to a particular frequency, then transmitted impulses of a very low electrical intensity to patient. These adjustments were made in accordance with empirical observations that Dr. Abrams had found useful in treating certain diseases. Once you locate the most appropriate value, the device transmitting the modulated energy to the patient through a cable connected to an electrode placed on a patient's spleen area, which was where the most positive response was obtained. Apparently, this area coincides with the splenic chakra that plays an important role in the distribution of qi, or vital energy, in the meridians and energy systems of the body. Although several sessions were needed with oscilloclast to achieve lasting healing effects, Abrams and his students obtained great success in using this new device for energy to cure a wide range of diseases. For years, Dr. Abrams continued to refine his system and his therapy devices, also discovering thousands of radionics measures for diseases and his vibrational remedies.